One of the best restaurants in New York City and one of the best in the entire country is Per Se. Led by legendary chef Thomas Keller, Per Se has maintained 3 Michelin stars ever since the guide came to New York. I had their 9-course chef's tasting menu for $390 and I enjoyed one of the greatest meals of my entire life. It's an absolutely beautiful day here in New York City. Right now I'm at Madison Square Park, but I'd like to talk about yesterday, where I enjoyed a meal at not only one of New York City's best restaurants, I'm talking about one of the very best restaurants in the entire country. I went to Per Se. It has 3 Michelin stars and it's been a bucket list restaurant of mine ever since I became interested in fine dining. Now the reason why I haven't gone to Per Se before is quite simple. It's very expensive. Their tasting menu starts at $390 and that's before tax. So I delayed making a visit to the restaurant. I had all these excuses like it's too expensive, I don't have the time, it's tough getting a reservation, you know, that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is, one of my life's goals is to visit all these legendary restaurants, all these places that I put on my bucket list. So when I make excuses to myself saying like it's not the right time, well, the fact of the matter is it's never gonna be the perfect time. Life doesn't last forever, and the longer I delay going after what I actually want, the less opportunity I will have to actually achieve what I actually want. So the other day I was casually browsing Per Se's website, just looking at the reservations, and I saw there was one opening for a single diner a few days from that point, and I thought to myself, that is exactly what I want. This is in line with my goals. All I have to do is just take it. And I took it. However, making a reservation at Per Se is pretty intimidating because you have to put down $200 plus a $5 service fee just to secure your spot. Now, thankfully, that upfront cost is later credited towards your final bill. But after 72 hours, that reservation is non-refundable. As a result, I was incredibly paranoid in the days leading up to my dinner. I was thinking that I was gonna get sick, get hit by a car, or some sort of tragedy would befall me, causing me to miss my dinner and lose my $200. But thankfully, I made it to the restaurant in one piece, where I enjoyed not only the most expensive meal of my life, it was also one of the best meals of my entire life. This was my dinner at Per Se. Per Se is located along Columbus Circle in Midtown Manhattan on the 4th floor of the Deutsche Bank Center, which was formerly known as the Time Warner Center. Thomas Keller opened the restaurant in 2004, but it was a long road for Keller to get to that point. He worked at numerous restaurants in the US and abroad. One of those establishments was the classic New York City French bistro Raoul's, which would later lead to Keller partnering with one of its founders, Serge Raoul, to open Raquel. Raquel was located in Manhattan's Hudson Square neighborhood and was one of Keller's first big hits, but eventually he left the restaurant when Raoul wanted to simplify the cuisine to deal with the financial downturn of the time. This led to Keller opening the establishment that would cement his status in culinary history, the French Laundry in Yountville, California. The establishment has been named as one of the best restaurants in the world and has achieved a wealth of accolades, including earning 3 Michelin stars. The success of the French Laundry led to Keller opening Per Se, which served as a sort of East Coast interpretation of the French Laundry. Right off the bat, reservations for Per Se were nearly impossible to get. New York Times critic Frank Bruni gave the restaurant 4 stars in 2004, which was followed by Sam Sifton, who also awarded Per Se 4 stars in 2011. However, Per Se's history wasn't all smooth. Just a week after opening, a fire devastated the restaurant, forcing it to close for a period. And in 2016, New York Times critic Pete Wells gave the restaurant only 2 stars, citing a number of issues. However, Per Se has maintained its 3 Michelin stars since the guide landed in New York, and just recently the restaurant celebrated its 20th anniversary. The future certainly looks bright for the restaurant. For my dinner, I arrived at 5 p.m. and was led through the salon, which offers a more casual tasting menu. Inside the main dining room, the interior is a thing of beauty. It's a comfortable and spacious, dimly lit room with a spectacular view of Central Park and Midtown Manhattan perched a tall 4 stories above the street. I felt almost like a king, sitting on a throne, staring out upon the city as my kingdom. Besides the view, per se's service certainly makes one feel like royalty. Almost immediately after I was seated, I was offered a complimentary glass of champagne. It was a 2019 Modicum Extra Brut Blanc de Blancs. The wine was delicious. It was crisp and clean, and considering that a glass of it will normally set one back $41, it was a very nice gesture that set the tone of the truly excellent service. Although I was of course going to order more wine, so I explored the beverage list a bit, which was very nicely organized in a tablet. Per se has an extensive collection of wine that spans over 2,000 bottles with highlights from Screaming Eagle and DRC. In regards to the food, there are 2 main 9-course tasting menus, both with a price tag of $390. I found the pricing interesting since one of those menus offered only vegetarian options, but yet it was priced the same as the chef's tasting menu, which contained both meat and fish. As a contrast, the 3 Michelin-starred New York restaurant Le Bernardin also offers 2 tasting menus of the same length, with one of them being vegetarian but with a noticeable price reduction. Perhaps per se's vegetarian offerings are priced accordingly, as I did see some costly ingredients on the menu like black truffles. Nevertheless, I was solely focused on the standard chef's tasting menu, but one does have the option to customize their experience a bit with supplements, but they are costly. While the supplements did sound incredible, I just stuck with the standard offerings. With my order placed, it was time for the meal to begin. First up was a Thomas Keller classic, which is also offered at the French Laundry in some form, the salmon cornet. It's basically a mini cone with salmon tartare. The point of the dish, according to Keller, was to reduce the intimidation and make people smile right at the start of the meal. In that vein, the cone was a success. It was a delicious bite, but the fact that one is supposed to pick it up with their hands in such a luxurious restaurant helped put me at ease. The other offering was a play on cheese and crackers, and once again, it was delicious and fun. Next up was another amuse.
So in your bowl, you're going to see some Piedmont hazelnuts with the Yorkshire forced rhubarb as well.
Beautiful. The dish was a fennel veloute with Yorkshire forced rhubarb, bronze fennel, and Piedmont hazelnuts. It was an absolutely fantastic course. There was so much flavor in that broth, and I loved what the hazelnuts and rhubarb brought to the dish. So far, my dinner was off to a great start, and I hadn't even gotten to the first official course of the meal. But that was soon to come, as I was given a mother-of-pearl spoon which could only signify one thing. I was about to be served a dish that I've wanted to try for years, the oysters and pearls.
Oh wow. Chef Keller classic, the oysters and pearls.
The course is perhaps Keller's most famous culinary creation and is a permanent menu fixture at both Per Se and the French Laundry. It consists of a sabayon of pearl tapioca with Island Creek oysters and Regisova caviar. My first bite was simply magical. It was clear that I was consuming a culinary masterpiece. The sabayon was rich and creamy and was enhanced to a luxurious level with the saltiness of the caviar and the sea-like flavors of the oysters. I was also really grateful for my glass of champagne that paired beautifully with the dish. Without a doubt, the oysters and pearls lives up to the hype. It was a true treat for me to experience a dish that I've so longed for. After finishing the oysters and pearls, the sommelier brought my glass of wine to the table, which she held off from giving me earlier since the champagne was a natural pairing to the previous course. I got a glass of the 2019 Domaine Coastal Vaillant Chablis Premier Cru. The wine was wonderful. It had a strong nose and was an explosion of flavor. It certainly went nicely with my upcoming courses. Next up was the hen egg custard. Presentation-wise, the dish had a fascinating look to it, but flavor-wise, it just really didn't do it for me. The egg was filled with a ragout of black winter truffles. It tasted nice, but the balance of flavors wasn't really there. I thought it could have used a bit more acidity, and I just didn't really get the purpose of the chips stuck into the egg. It wasn't a bad dish, but I thought it could have been a bit more exciting. Next up was the salad of Norwich Meadows Farm brassicas. It contained a Parmesan-crusted broccoli rabe, a red wine agrodou, and a Caesar aioli. The salad was very pleasant. There were wonderful flavors and textures on that plate. And speaking of the plate, it was a beautiful piece of crockery. In fact, all of the tableware used throughout my dinner was tailored specifically to each course, which made every dish feel that much more special and luxurious. Not to mention that it's gotta be one hell of a job to do the dishes at per se, especially with so many courses offered. Served alongside my salad was bread and butter. The bread was small, it was almost bite-sized, but it was very good. It was nice and fresh with a wonderful texture, but it was brought to another level when combined with the butter, which was from one of the most renowned producers of the dairy product in the country, Hilary Hayes Animal Farm. There was a ton of flavor in the butter, and it was so smooth. In fact, Animal Farm, which was amusingly started in Orwell, Vermont, sells their butter to the French Laundry, as well as the 3 Michelin-starred The Inn at Little Washington. Overall, the bread and butter were incredible, but I wish that the bread was a bit larger, but I'm sure I could have gotten another piece if I just made the request. Next up was the Mediterranean lubina with Hawaiian hearts of peach palm, Tokyo turnips, garden chervil, and a blanquette de poisson. The lubina, also known as sea bass, was delicious. It was nice and tender, and I loved the flavorful white sauce it was resting in. The fish was truly cooked to perfection. In fact, every course I had throughout the evening was executed perfectly. There was not a single error the restaurant committed in regards to their cooking, which was quite a testament to the professionalism of the staff inside the kitchen. Following the lubina was one of my favorite courses of the evening, the Stonington, Maine sea scallop. The dish contained glazed beets, Meiwa kumquats, Kendall Farms creme fraiche, citrus fern, and a citrus beurre blanc. First off, the presentation was stunning. It was modern and eye-catching. Flavor-wise, the scallop was perfectly seared, and the components on the plate contributed a series of remarkable flavors and textures. Simply put, that was a top-notch plate of food. Next up, the cuisine got even better. I was presented with the Wolf Ranch quail breast with pommes maxine et élégout, cream spinach, and a jambon gastrique. Now, I've had a number of great quail courses from other Michelin-starred restaurants, but per se's quail blew me away. Quite frankly, it was the best quail that I've ever had. Not to mention, I was amused by the look of the actual plate, decorated with birds. Once again, per se nailed it in terms of their dishware. After finishing, I was presented with another one of the star courses of the evening, the Elysian Fields Farm Saddle of Lamb. The dish contained a Benet seed, pan perdue, caramelized leeks, a Tokyo menji, and a pimenton jus. My first bite blew me away. It was clear that the lamb was of an extraordinary quality.
Now that we've gotten into the tasting phase, how is it?
Oh yeah, this is absolutely excellent.
Fantastic.
Love it. Thank you.
The meat was so good on its own, but the pimenton jus paired spectacularly with the lamb. And speaking of pairings, red wine obviously would have gone well with the meat, but I declined to get any further beverages, mainly to save money. However, my sommelier generously poured me just enough wine to enjoy with the meat, which I really appreciated. The wine was a 2011 R. Lopez de Heredia Vina Tondonia Reserva Rioja. Indeed, it was a wonderful beverage, and it paired beautifully with the lamb. Everything on my table was just so wonderful, and I still had more dishes to go. Transitioning to dessert was the cheese course, but it's not some simple slice of cheese, but a thoughtfully crafted dish. It was Gruyere with Comte and black winter truffles. The dish was composed of a crispy sort of shell that nestled a warm and melty cheese spiked with truffles inside. I love cheese, and I thought that was pretty damn tasty. Finally, it was time for the dessert course, which was really multiple courses that rained down on my table all at once.
Gonna be putting on some cashew butter for you on your ice cream, which is a popcorn sherbet.
It's hard not to be dazzled by so much delicious looking food in front of me. It was truly an epic sight, and I couldn't wait to dive in. Logically, I had to consume the frozen dishes first. To begin, I tried the popcorn sherbet, which had caramel corn and fudge sauce. It was really nice and refreshing, well balanced, and the perfect first dessert. Next, I turned my attention to a true Thomas Keller classic, the coffee and donuts, which consisted of a cappuccino semifreddo that is paired with a simple cinnamon sugar donut. The donut is exactly what it appears to be. It's just a delightful donut, but the cappuccino isn't a warm beverage, rather it's a cool cappuccino-like ice cream topped with a foamy froth. The flavors may be simple and familiar, but it's utterly delicious. As a coffee lover, I thought Keller's Coffee and Donuts was a true masterpiece and the type of dish that I could happily eat every day. Also on the table was a wonderful, small sort of coconut cream pie that was punctuated by delightful citrus flavors. And of course, there was a chocolate dish which was rich and decadent. In addition, there was a bowl filled with a delightful selection of pedophores. But before I could finish all those desserts, I was given even more food. My server presented me with a colorful assortment of bonbons to choose from. I selected a few, with the first one I tried being a raspberry cheesecake flavor, and it was truly an excellent confection. I later noticed on the other chocolates that the flavor of the piece was actually printed on their bottoms. As I finished my meal, I reflected on the dinner overall. First off, the service was outstanding and some of the best that I've ever experienced. Every time I finished a course, my plates were cleared and my tableware was replaced in the blink of an eye. There was also a great atmosphere to the restaurant. It was no doubt formal, but not as uptight and rigid as some establishments. I certainly felt relaxed and at ease inside per se. On the restaurant's website, there's a bit about Thomas Keller's philosophy regarding his guests, which is basically to make people happy. In that sense, per se was definitely a success for me. I knew that the bill that I was about to receive was going to be big and that I would have to adjust my spending in the upcoming weeks. However, I was also aware that within time, the money I spent at per se wouldn't mean nearly as much to me as the amazing memories I made that evening. With everything finished, it was time to pay the bill, which totaled to $459.45. The $200 I spent to reserve my spot was credited towards my final cost, so I didn't have to spend it as much that evening. In addition, per se does include the cost of service within the price of their food, so that does take a bit of the sting off the final total. Still, I thought that the service was so spectacular that I felt compelled to leave an additional tip of $40, but I wish I still could have done a bit more. For the final total, which included my tip and the $5 service fee I had to pay to make my reservation, the bill came to $504.45. That was pretty damn expensive. Although my experience at Per Se wasn't over yet, as I was invited for a tour of Per Se's beautiful kitchen, which I really appreciated. Everyone worked diligently but calmly. It was a far cry from the tyrannical kitchens you sometimes hear about. As I was about to leave, I was given my own personalized menu of the courses I had that evening, which is something that I would love to get framed in the future. Plus, I was given a sort of gift bag that was filled with a fine selection of chocolate and bites that I enjoyed in the days following my dinner. As I left Per Se, I couldn't have been more happy. So I just finished with my dinner at Per Se. That was phenomenal. That was one of the greatest meals of my entire life. Some of those dishes were so amazing, I almost wanted to cry, they were so good. Food is one of the greatest passions of my life, and I live for the types of experiences like the one I just had at Per Se. Now, there's no question, that was very expensive. That was the most expensive meal of my entire life. But for me, that was absolutely worth it. Having meals like the one I just had tonight motivates me to work even harder so I can get this experience again at all these bucket list restaurants I have on my list. Now, as much as I loved my dinner tonight, it's not the way how I'd want to eat all the time, because sometimes I just want a big damn steak, a hot bowl of ramen, a simple pizza slice. I mean, the culinary world is so rich and there's so many experiences to have, but that was pretty special. Restaurants like Per Se are the epitome of culinary excellence, chefs at the top of their craft, and to experience that, at least every once in a while, is a very special thing. Money comes and goes. I'll be able to earn it back, but that memory I'll have forever. My dinner at Per Se was absolutely magical. I loved it, and I can't wait to return.